This is a story of kindness and both unfortunate and fortunate events that led to my mom and I reuniting with my grandma after 3 years of not seeing each other and bringing her to safety. Let me tell you a backstory first. My grandma lives in eastern Ukraine in a small city of Lozova. Up until 2020, we used to see her every summer. We would either visit her in Ukraine or she would visit us here in Finland. In 2019, we celebrated Grandma's 80th birthday, and then the pandemic hit, and we couldn't see each other. We were planning to visit Grandma this summer, but life had other plans. On the 24th of February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, which changed millions of people's lives forever. We weren't sure when we were going to see my grandma again, if ever. It was a very scary day. When we realized what was happening, I tried to get in touch with Grandma, but her Skype wasn't working for a while, and we thought that we had lost the only way of contacting her. We didn't know if she was safe and how she was feeling. She has a heart disease after all, and worrying too much is not good for her. Luckily, my grandma is an optimistic person. When she finally messaged me, she let us know that she's okay, not worried, that everything is under control, and that we shouldn't worry either. For Grandma's well-being, her positive attitude was great, but it didn't make me less worried. For the first week, I read the news and monitored the situation pretty much non-stop. I was scared for Grandma's safety every day, because her apartment is on the 3rd floor of a 4-story building, and she lives alone. Very quickly, however, the situation became our new normal. We had Skype calls with Grandma twice a day. In the evenings, she would turn off the lights and cover the windows with towels just in case, before calling us from the hallway, which was the safest place in her apartment. I tried to stay optimistic and comfort myself with the thought that civilian areas, especially smaller ones, should not be attacked. Unfortunately, it soon became clear that no city or village is safe. For the first 3.5 weeks, everything in Lozova was relatively peaceful, but in the nearby areas, the situation grew more intense each day. At one point, people were evacuated from the nearby city Izum to Lozova, which reassured us that Grandma was in a safe place. But on the 22nd of March, there was a first missile attack on Lozova, killing a man, injuring 9 people, and damaging 20 houses. Grandma heard the explosions and saw black smoke in the distance from her window, which really scared her and made her cry. That's when reality really hit us, but we strongly believed that it wasn't possible for my grandma to leave Lozova. People who left the city by train on the first days of war had to travel 20 hours to western Ukraine, and the trains were so packed that there was barely room to move. Grandma wouldn't have survived a journey like that. So as hard as it was, we decided to accept the situation and hope for the best. We really hoped that there wouldn't be any more attacks, but we were wrong again. This is when things started progressing very quickly and unexpectedly. After another attack, which left Lozova without electricity and water, the mayor of the city suddenly made an announcement advising people to leave Lozova due to a growing risk of missile strikes. There wasn't an official evacuation yet, but it was clear to us that we just had to find a way to get my grandma out of the city before it was too late. And now it's time to introduce you to a person who played a very important role in our reunion with my grandma. This is Evgenia, or Zhenya. She's the person we could always count on, and she has always been there for Grandma when help was needed. By the time of Mayor's announcement, she had already left Lviv in western Ukraine. So what happened was, after we read the announcement, we had a Skype call with Grandma and began persuading her to leave Lozova. We told Grandma that we will plan and organize everything, although we still didn't know how. But we told her to mentally prepare herself to leave within a week or so. Right as we finished the call, Zhenya called Mom. She had obviously read Mayor's announcement too, and this is what she said. My friends are leaving Lozova tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. by car, and there's room for one more person. They're coming here to Lviv, and will gladly take Grandma with them, but I can't promise you anything. We don't know if the journey will be safe. We don't know what they will encounter. There are people who have literally died from stress behind the wheel. But these friends of mine are the people I can 100% trust. I'll leave it up to you to make a decision, but just so you know, there will be no more opportunities. After hearing these words, Mom agreed right away. So Zhenya called Grandma to let her know the plan. And about 3 hours later, Grandma had packed all the important things and was ready to go. It was the scariest decision we've ever had to make, and I'm sure Mom will agree with me. As soon as it was clear that Grandma is going, I just burst into tears because I was so scared that we had made a wrong decision. But in the morning, when Zhenya let us know that her friends along with my grandma had left Lozova, there was no turning back. I was worried, but at the same time I was glad that Grandma was feeling good and hadn't changed her mind last minute. Up until almost 3 p.m, there was no news from Zhenya's friends, and we were starting to get worried. But that's when Zhenya let us know that they had crossed the Dnipro River and are continuing their journey towards Lviv. At this point, we could relax a little bit, because what we felt was the most dangerous part of the journey was over. So my mom and I started looking for a way to get to Lviv and then back to Finland with my grandma. By 8 p.m. that evening, we had found a Finnish volunteer who was about to go on his 9th humanitarian trip to Lviv, along with a group of other volunteers. He agreed to take my mom and I with him as translators. At about 10 p.m, Zhenya's friends along with my grandma had arrived in Uman, where they stayed overnight. On Tuesday morning, their journey continued, and my mom and I started getting ready for ours. We only took one backpack each with us, with no spare clothes, because we thought we would be back before the weekend, but we ended up coming back almost a week later. On Tuesday evening, after about an hour that my mom and I had arrived at the Oulu railway station, Zhenya messaged my mom that Grandma is now safe with her and is feeling good. We were so relieved to hear that. All we had to think about for now was getting to Grandma safely. After waiting for a delayed train at the station for over an hour, our journey could finally begin. It felt so surreal to be traveling again, for the first time in almost 3 years, especially knowing that we will see my grandma very soon. It took almost 5.5 hours for our train to reach Vantaa, where we spent the night at the hotel that Timo, the Finnish volunteer I talked about, had booked for us. I mean, we only had less than 4 hours of sleep, but it was way better than having to wait for our flight at the airport. At 6 a.m, we hopped into a taxi and made our way to the Helsinki airport. We had to skip a long queue at the security control to board our flight before the gate closed, and we made it there just in time. Mom and I didn't really know much about this trip beforehand, and were just following Timo's lead. At the airport, it turned out that he, along with a couple of other volunteers, were also going to Vinica to bring humanitarian aid and pick up people. It was much more dangerous there, so Timo had to take a bulletproof vest with him, and we saw it. That's when it really sinked in that we were actually going into a country where there's a war. As I said earlier, this was Timo's 9th trip to Ukraine. He is the one who originally started this humanitarian operation, but there are also lots of other volunteers involved who are making these trips possible, from donators to bus drivers.
Tervetuloa Varsovaan. Pyydämme teitä vielä istumaan paikallanne turvavyöt kiinnitettynä, kunnes turvavyömerkkivalo sammuu.
We landed in Warsaw at 8:15 and spent a couple of hours at the airport, answering calls and replying to the messages from people who wanted to come to Finland with us. Then we hopped into a taxi that took us to the minibus, where another Finnish volunteer, Petri, was waiting for us. After a visit to the gas station, we continued our journey towards the Polish-Ukrainian border, but it didn't go as smoothly as expected. Just about half an hour into our journey, we noticed that there was something wrong with our minibus, but we had to keep driving all the way to Lublin to find out exactly what's wrong. When we arrived at the car repair place, the weird noise that the minibus was making was very obvious. You don't even have to be a car expert to know that it was not normal. It turned out that one of the wheels was loose, and there was something wrong with the brake. We ended up spending 3.5 hours at this place. We could have been at the border by the time the repair was finished. But it had to be done, and I'm glad that they were able to fix everything, and it was safe for us to continue the journey. This whole time, Mom was in contact with Zhenya and kept her up to date. When we found out that we would not return to Finland until Saturday, Mom asked her to book a hotel for us, which she did. She found an amazing hotel through a humanitarian organization in the Lviv region, and booked a room for 3 nights for my mom, my grandma, and I. Zhenya and Grandma had already checked into the hotel when we weren't even at the border yet. At around 9 p.m., we finally arrived in the border town of Medica, where another Finnish volunteer, Sami, very kindly offered to walk my mom and I across the border and drive us to our hotel. At the border, my anxiety kicked in. I knew that very soon we will cross into Ukraine and not be completely safe anymore. Walking past the tents and seeing all the people queuing up to leave the country felt very surreal. There were barely any people crossing into Ukraine, so we got through the passport control very quickly. Once we crossed the border, Sami took us to his minibus and we set off. The 2.5-hour journey to the hotel was pretty nerve-wracking. The road was pitch black, most of the road signs were taped up, and there were quite a few checkpoints. We were stopped 2 times, and Sami had to show some documents, but overall the journey went smoothly. I'm so thankful to Sami. I don't know what we would have done without his help. Just so you know, after dropping us off, he had to drive all the way back and cross the border again, so you can imagine how late he got back to his hotel. We arrived in a small town in Lviv region after midnight, and couldn't find our hotel at first.
Это не тот, мам. Ottaako nyt sitä, onko pitäisi heti nuolla kohdalla, että mä vaikeutuisi sitä vielä vähän, mutta jotka ei tehty. Tuolla tuli ehkä jotain torneja, eikö ne on jo tuolla. Voi joutua vähän matkaa ajamaan.
Eteenpäin.
Joo.
Just a couple of minutes later, we found the hotel.
Mennään. Jos me mennään sinne ei paloutaa pari minuutin kuluttua, sinä voi lähteä. Kestävä matka ja Norden kohta. Joo, kiitos.
Просто сейчас комендантский час у них.
Заходите, заходите.
На 6. Идем.
We were let inside by the reception lady, and after checking in, we were only a few minutes away from the moment we've been waiting for.
Мамулька.
Я знаю, что мы приехали. Все, не будем плакать, будем только радоваться твоей.
Вот еще и эту красавицу еще.
Тихо, там люди. Ой, точно. Ой, какой счастливый день.
Все, прорвемся.
Ой, спасибо, Женечка, спасибо ее друзьям.
Вообще, какие люди вообще на свете много есть.
Они всегда были.
Да, хорошие
At around 11:30 on Saturday, after unexpectedly having to wait on the railway station for 3 hours, we left Lviv and headed home. The journey back was extremely hard and stressful, not only physically, but also mentally. I was really worried about Grandma the whole time, especially after her blood pressure suddenly dropped when our journey hasn't even properly started yet. This happened after an 11-hour wait to cross the border. We crossed into Poland at around midnight and had our first warm meal of the day. We were really happy to cross the border, but we still had a really long journey ahead. We picked a few people up in Warsaw, where we arrived on Sunday morning, and then drove all the way through Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Because of the extremely long wait at the Ukrainian border and many stops along the way, we arrived in Tallinn very late, at around 3 a.m. on Monday morning. There were obviously no more ferries to Helsinki at that time, so we had to wait for the 7 a.m. ferry. Thankfully, we got to stay at the hotel, where we could stretch our legs and rest for a couple of hours. Unfortunately, Grandma managed to fall on the bus when we arrived at the hotel, which scared us all, but she was very lucky to get away with nothing worse than bruised knees.
Мамулька, мамулька, мне.
When we finally got on the train to Oulu, we were very exhausted, but relieved and happy that everything worked out and we made it to Finland. The distance that Grandma traveled from Lozova all the way to Oulu was around 3,230 kilometers. Pretty amazing for an 82-year-old, right?